My name is Mastrantonio. My pronouns are they and them, and I am a PhD student from the University of Southampton in the UK. This poster is on the initial findings of a systematic review that I am conducting as part of my PhD project on the topic of sexual health, sexuality, and relationship satisfaction of transgender and non-binary individuals. The rationale for a systematic review in this area was that literature on this topic is growing exponentially. Summarizing the existing finding would aid our understanding of current knowledge of trans people's sexuality and also help us evaluate current research, therefore guiding the focus of future studies. My research question was, what does quantitative research tell us about sexuality, sexual health, well-being and relationship satisfaction in the non-binary and transgender adult population? I had two aims. My first was to better understand what is currently known about sexual orientation, fluidity, sexual satisfaction, health, well-being, and relationship satisfaction in the non-binary and transgender population. And the second aim was to assess what kind of scales have been used to measure these variables. I decided to include empirical quantitative studies that directly involved non-binary and/or transgender adults, people over the age of 16, as participants. It was decided not to include papers that solely focused on HIV and STI prevalence or treatment or qualitative studies, as these were the focus of previous systematic reviews. Included papers were in English or Italian and published between 2012 and 2022. I conducted my searches on the databases PsycInfo, Medline, and Web of Science in September 2022. Head searches were also conducted in an effort to identify all relevant literature. A total of 191 papers was included in full text. So in terms of results, I identified 5 main themes. For sexual satisfaction, well-being, and function theme, the majority of the articles describe medical transition outcomes and effects on orgasm, ability, and pleasure, often only focusing on a small sample of binary transgender individuals. Most studies used a self-constructed measure or a scale that had only been validated on cisgender people. For instance, the Female Sexual Function Index was used on transgender women, with a cutoff score for this function being the one that had been previously standardized on cisgender women. The second theme was relationship satisfaction. For this theme, I was able to identify 7 studies. This indicates that more research is needed to investigate this area. Importantly, most of the articles in this category did not include a measure of sexual satisfaction. This limits our understanding of the interaction between relationship and sexual satisfaction in the trans and non-binary population. The third theme, sexual health, focused on pregnancy involvement, contraception, fertility preservation, and sexual clinic attendance. Sexual orientation and fluidity was the fourth theme identified. Overall, changes in sexual orientation were often analyzed in the context of medical transition, for example, before and after starting hormone therapy, and measures of sexual attraction mostly relied on a binary language, i.e., people were asked whether they were attracted to men, women, both, or neither. In a small but relevant number of articles, confusion persisted between gender identity and sexual orientation labels, with transgender being used as a label for sexual orientation. The final theme encompassed sexual behavior and mostly focused on high-risk behaviors, particularly among transgender women, such as condomless intercourse, commercial sex, sexualized use of drug and alcohol. So, in general, research seemed to reflect a medicalized view of trans people's sexual life and seemed to try to explain or evaluate trans people's sexual experiences through cisnormative lens, reducing broad concepts such as sexual satisfaction, to the ability of orgasming or experiencing arousal. The psychometric tools used were often inadequate and relied on a binary language that is inappropriate for this population. Future research would benefit from more inclusivity and from broadening its scope by exploring different facets of trans and non-binary people's sexuality and partnerships. As a result of the findings from my systematic review, the next steps of my PhD are to work on a quantitative study on sexual orientation, well-being, satisfaction, with a focus on non-binary people, using more inclusive tools and measures. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. My email is f.mastrantonio@southern.ac.uk, and you can also see it in the poster. And I thank you for listening to my presentation.